Okay, so I think we've met our critical mass. In case you missed it, my name is Janet Jansen. I'm the Senior Marketing Manager here at OYA Renewables. And today we're here with Jay Anderson and Pallavi Balakrishnan from OYA Renewables, and Jay Anderson is from SIEDC. And today we're going to talk about an initiative that is for Staten Island, but I think really applies to more broadly to anyone who is a property owner or has a business. And we're going to talk about on-site community solar and really how you can benefit from it and drive revenue. So today our agenda is essentially we're going to introduce ourselves so you get to know a little bit about us. We're going to talk about this very specific case of Staten Island, but I think this also applies to any sort of coastal region. We'll talk about the state programs and the federal programs and incentives that are available. And then we're going to get a little bit more into the meat of on-site solar and community solar, what exactly that is, what the process is for getting started, and what the benefits are. And of course, we're going to talk about some timelines all the way from letter of intent to operation, what you can expect if you decide to go with that. And then, of course, we have other clean technology that we have started some initiatives here at OYA Renewables, and we'll introduce them to you as well. So I'm not going to talk too much here. And I'm going to turn things over to Pallavi Balakrishnan. She's the Senior Manager of Community Solar at OYA Renewables, and I'm going to turn it over to her to introduce herself, and I'm just going to stop talking now. So over to you, Pallavi.
Thank you, Janet. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
Perfect. Like Janet mentioned, I'm the Senior Manager of Origination at OYA Renewables. So I essentially help educating our local communities and businesses about the different solar energy and clean energy programs in New York, like I will be today. I also assist with putting together a company's community solar strategy. Over to Jay. Oh, Jay, you're on mute.
There we go. Thank you, Pallavi. I'm Jay Anderson with the Staten Island Economic Development Corporation, and I've been the industrial business manager for a lot of years, 97 all the way up. Staten Island offers a good opportunity for the discussion that we're going to have today. Our organizations has always promoted public investment, sustainable development, and employment opportunities, those three things. And this really zeroes in on all three. And we hope to really target a community master plan for the lower to middle income areas in there. Staten Island has an industrial and commercial areas, but primarily is highly residential. And with those type of operations that are there. So we look forward to answering your questions and presenting this information today. So I'll give it back to Pallavi.
Thank you. I believe Jay just went over this. I'm really happy that Jay and SIEDC are with us today. SIEDC, as Jay mentioned, is a very important organization in Staten Island. They've provided a lot of resources to local businesses and have done a lot to uplift the local economy. So I'm excited to talk about how we can OYA Renewables and how, as a collaboratively partner with SIEDC and continue to contribute to and enhance Staten Island's economy through our local solar energy solutions that I will get into shortly. I'd like to just give a bit of background about OYA Renewables. We are a developer and operator of medium to large solar energy projects, and we're very active across the Northeast and specifically New York. We've developed approximately 1.5 gigawatts of solar energy projects, which, to put things in perspective, it's equivalent to electrifying approximately 164,000 homes in the US. We now have over 6 gigawatts in pipeline, so in very many different stages of development. So we do have a lot of work ahead of us, but we're very excited. So here are some pictures of projects that we've done in the past. At the bottom, you can see one in New York, one in Massachusetts, and in Canada. Slide. So why are we here today talking about climate change, and what does it mean for Staten Islanders? So we hear about glaciers melting in Alaska and the Amazon forest cover decreasing, and it all seems really far away. But when you hear that sea level rise could swallow up vast sections of Staten Island's waterfront, like Midland Beach or Oakwood Beach in a few decades, it really hits home. There's a series called Staten Island 2100 that a local reporter, Joseph Ostapyuk, put together. It was launched recently, and it explores the potential impact of climate change on the borough over the next century. So through this series, they took a lot of complex data measured by smart scientists, such as tidal gauges, sea level rise, and they analyzed it and presented it visually. And that's what you see on this slide on the left-hand side. So the top left picture shows where we're at today, where we're now seeing 7 high flooding days, nearly double of what the same gauge saw in 2000. In a worst case scenario where we don't take any action, the bottom left is what Staten Island is going to look like in 80 years. So you could see that sea level rise and extreme flooding under this scenario could fundamentally alter Staten Island's coastline. Now, although everyone will feel the impact of climate change in some form, low-income communities, unfortunately, are disproportionately impacted by it. And as you can see on the right-hand side, the image there, as you can see on the image on the right-hand side, there are quite a big amount of or population of low-income communities on the north and east shore. Such communities already have higher rates of health conditions and take longer to bounce back from natural disasters due to lack of resources. And to add to that, these households are generally more sensitive to rising energy costs, which we're now facing in this current environment. Slide, Janet, thank you. Now, the good thing, I've painted a really great picture there, but the good thing is that now governments, Fortune 500 companies, public and private sectors are recognizing the importance of climate change and the costs that come with it. We ended this summer on an exciting note when the Inflation Reduction Act, IRA, was signed into law by the US federal government, representing the single biggest climate investment in US history. This act earmarks over $300 billion in tax incentives aimed to accelerate the country's energy transition away from fossil fuels. And the IRA is expected to reduce US greenhouse gas emissions by 40% in the next 8 years. We also see the state of New York pursue similar goals to reducing greenhouse gas emissions by 40%. And this has translated into several local requirements, such as Local Law 97, whereby buildings over 25,000 square feet are required to meet new energy efficiency rules and GHG emission limits by 2024. So we actually looked into the number of buildings that meet this criteria in Staten Island, and there are approximately 3,700 buildings measured at or higher than greater than 25,000 square feet. So there is a lot of opportunity in the borough for implementing this. I'm also sure, and I hope that these property owners have started thinking about this deadline, as we have a bit over a year to 2024, failing which there will be penalties that this city will enforce. There's also Local Law 92 and 94, whereby all new buildings and roof replacements must install some form of solar or green roofs. Finally, there's the 100% electric school buses by 2035 requirement that was recently released, whereby by 2027, all new school bus purchases will have to be zero emission vehicles. So with traditional rooftop solar, which some people on this webinar may have pursued or already thought about, there are a few challenges, such as high upfront costs related to getting the right permits, engineering and installation costs, as well as the ongoing operating and maintenance costs to keep the project in good shape over 25 to 30 years. There's also challenges that come with obtaining financing to help fund these costs. And granted, the tax credits that I talked about earlier will help offset some of it, but it won't be enough to cover all of the costs. In some cases, like for government, schools, and not-for-profits, there is no tax appetite for such a project. Also, in-house resources for businesses and property owners are limited. They already have their core business to run and take care of and properties to manage. So there is limited time and effort that they can spend on such an undertaking, which can span over several months. And finally, traditional rooftop has only benefited the landlord or the property manager, and it could take several years for them to break even once and if they take on this high upfront cost that I mentioned. So to overcome the barriers that I just went over, we are going to go over two solutions: community solar and on-site solar. In both cases, OYA will take care of the installation of the panels on a rooftop or on a piece of land that we find that's ideal for the solution. And then we also take on the development, construction, and maintenance work and cost of the entire project. And I'll get into some of the details of what that entails in a few slides. Now, the key differences between the two projects are that in the case of community solar, there will be guaranteed savings that are applied to the utility bill, and that helps reduce your electricity costs every month. Compared to the on-site solar offering, with the on-site solar offering, you would purchase the electricity from the site directly at a fixed cost. So that does help control and give you predictable electricity spend. And in some cases, the rate could be cheaper than the retail rate that you would otherwise spend through the utility, but this isn't guaranteed. The other important difference between the two is that community solar provides the ability to share the benefits with tenants in the property or anyone that is connected to the Con Ed utility territory by providing them with a discount on their utility bills. Hence the name community solar. It generally benefits the community, versus with the on-site solution, as I mentioned, you don't have that benefit of sharing the benefits to other tenants and people in the community. So over the next two slides, I will be focusing on the community solar solution, the most popular solution that we're hearing about in New York right now, given the superior benefits it presents. Beyond the reduced energy costs for landlords and tenants that I just went over, OYA will pay lease payments to the landlord for hosting the community solar project on their roof, which creates essentially a new revenue stream for the landlord for the unused piece of their real estate. The lease payments can help cover any legal and administration costs that come up for the property owner in this process, or just help with their ongoing operating expenses. Additionally, this solution will help property owners meet the local laws that I mentioned earlier, like the energy efficiency regulations, as well as their own clean energy goals that sometimes companies already are set or put together by their board of directors or their climate committees. And finally, the additional savings that come with community solar can enable property owners to take their clean energy approach a step further. And what this looks like would be implementing other clean and innovative technologies like EV charging ports and solar car ports, which you can see on the right-hand side. So there's wireless and wired EV charging ports that can be installed and hooked up to a canopy. And this canopy has solar panels installed on it that essentially powers the chargers. So this allows properties to build on their clean energy approach right now and not have to wait another 5 years to implement such innovative solutions. So the next slide essentially illustrates the structure and relationships among the various parties, because sometimes it can seem a bit complex, but this is a really simple way of taking a look at the relationship among all the parties involved. So OYA Renewables would own the solar facility on the roof, and we would have two main agreements. One is the lease agreement with the property owner, which would include the annual lease payments to the property manager I just spoke about, which would go on for a period of about 25 to 35 years. And the second agreement is the community solar subscription agreement, which is the mechanism that allows the tenants and the property owner, the housing entity, to sign up to or subscribe to the solar project and receive the guaranteed savings in exchange. So that's really simply what the structure looks like. The next slide goes over a typical timeline of the entire process from start to finish. It would take anywhere from 12 to 15 months for a project to go from, the first definitive, letter of intent stage to the end, which is just the completion of the project and when it's ready to eventually then get turned on. So the first stage is to sign the letter of intent, which just allows us to begin putting in the work that goes into doing due diligence and site visits. We also put together some preliminary layouts and put together a project scope. We then simultaneously then will begin negotiating the lease agreement with the property owner, and with the owner's introduction or help to introduce us to the tenants, we would then sign up the tenants to the program via the community solar subscription agreement that I previously mentioned. This process can typically take about 3 months. We would then move on to beginning the utility interconnection process, and we would work with the relevant business agencies and stakeholders to obtain all the right permitting permits, which then can take about 3 to 6 months again. Now that we've completed or obtained all the right building and construction permits, we would then proceed to the construction process, which can take 3 months, but it can also take longer, just depending on things like weather and other things that may come up in the due diligence and the permitting phase. So in parallel, while we go through this process, OYA in the background then will obtain and structure all the right financing in order to make the project happen. And that will line up through the development and construction phase to the end, which is at the 12 to 15 month mark. So just really quickly, back once a project begins operation, we expect it to be around, just on the previous slide there, I know the end looked like construction, but then we expect the project to be around for 30 years, in some cases longer. So our operation and maintenance team would then be engaged to monitor the site on an ongoing basis and troubleshoot it in case there are any disruptions. So here are some more details or the specific tasks under each stage. As you can see, there's a lot of work that goes into putting this project together. So we have all the right, teams and the capabilities to complete this. What we like to be transparent about is that the more information we get from property owners and landlords, the faster and easier the process is for all parties. So in the initial stages, we ask for information such as rooftop and building reports, as well as utility bills. We then complete, like I mentioned before, a preliminary scope and layout using our simulation software, which you can see on the right-hand side. And then once the lease agreement is in place and the subscription agreement is in place, then we can go full force into the engineering and technical analysis that takes place, which then informs the construction process. So this is what a complete site would look like after the construction ends. We do get a frequently asked question, I would say, is that what makes an ideal rooftop? So typically a rooftop that is clear of obstructions and there's not a ton of tree cover over it is relatively a good roof or an ideal roof. However, we look at things like the roof condition as well. Like if there's a roof that is very old and the property owner is ready to re-roof, that would also make a really good site for us and a perfect time for us to actually get involved. So yeah, so this kind of completes the construction piece of it and what the final stage would look like. And the next slide, Janet. Yeah, so the focus on today's webinar was on community solar and on-site. However, if you really want to make a large and immediate impact, adding other clean energy and innovative solutions is necessary. So adding things like battery storage provides additional backup power during power outages. Adding EV charging ports really position ourselves to meet the demand for electric vehicles, a lot of which we're going to see on the road very soon. And also adding geothermal energy, which is essentially groundwater sourced energy, delivers heating and cooling for buildings that need it. So we at OYA Renewables, we have the capability to implement all these solutions in a seamless way for your organization. And it allows your organization to deal with just one company through the whole process. So with that, I think we will end here. I believe that was a lot of information, but we would love to open up for questions at this point. We can also link our emails, if you're okay, Jay, in the chat in case people want to reach out to us after. We're happy to go through specific details of your specific site as well.
Okay, Pallavi, we did have, there is like one question in the chat and it's about the site size. And I think it would be helpful also to talk about like what the typical size of roof would be. And then, you know, if they do have like a parking lot or any sort of like adjacent properties, what kind of opportunities are there to make use of like renewable energy?
Yeah, I'll start with defining what a medium size project would be and a large size. So on a piece of land, I would say, actually in this case, let's talk just buildings. So with on buildings anywhere from 44,000, around the 44,000 to 60,000 square feet would be considered a medium size project or roof space. And anything over that would be considered a large project. Now, we still would look at, you know, buildings that are under that measure. So, you know, anything like 25,000 square feet and over, we would still look at those. If they're really small, we would then, you know, see if it makes sense for us to complete the deliverable. And then it's just everything's on a case by case. So we would first look at your property. But that just gives you an understanding of what a medium-sized project would be and then what a large size would look like.
Okay, and then we had another chat come in from Kathleen, and she asks, can you elaborate on the agreements with tenants? Is that residential tenants? And I think she's also asking perhaps about if there are it's available to commercial tenants as well. And I think this is related to the community solar program.
Yeah, I mean, great question. This is the great part about community solar. The agreements are with any tenant, meaning it could be with a Walmart or Starbucks, or it could be with you, Kathleen, on your for your own residence. So it's with everyone.
And then we had a question from Sho. So essentially, community solar agreements can go with any tenants, is what Pallavi was saying. And Sho asks, can you do solar on a 10-year-old roof with 10 to 15-year roof warranty outstanding?
That's a great question. I would say yes. There may be buts. So right now it's a yes. We can do it. We would have to consult with our engineering construction team and figure out how we can deliver this solution to you. But the answer to that is yes. There may be some things that come up, like at the 15-year mark, is there some re-roofing that we can do? But we might have to price that in or factor that into the solution. But the general answer to that is yes.
Okay, are there any more questions? We can just wait a moment and see if there's anything else that comes up. So I think also I have a question for Jay, and I'm just going to turn this over to him. So one thing that I don't think we spoke a lot about, and just to put you on the spot here, is that part of the reason why we're hosting this webinar together is that there is a state program grant that we applied for. Maybe you can talk a little bit about what that program is and why that's relevant to the Staten Island community.
Sure. Sure, thanks. So SIEDC had put a grant, an application for a grant from NYSERDA because we were concerned with the lower middle income areas, the LMI areas on Staten Island, maybe not getting enough on the solar, and hopefully to get like the property owners and developers to incorporate that. We hear everybody's looking maybe for an EV charging station, or they want to put solar on. And through the course of the last 5-8 years or even better, there was more of an approach from the market, hey, you too could have solar. In this case, we really wanted to do and NYSERDA, the state wanted, was to educate. And even in this presentation that we're doing today, the opportunity to meet with, say, OYA Renewables on what the capacity is and what other steps are to break down, because a lot of times it's not just putting a solar, it's what, the agreements, who owns it, and and how the savings come in, and knowing that up front is very important to what you would want to do a full project on your property. And on Staten Island, it could be as simple as a type of one building, or it could be a facility. And a lot of our not-for-profits have vast property sites with multiple buildings and want to do that, but wanted to do it in a way where they're structured to go down. They may, at one point do the solar to add in electric, or the canopies that are there, and using their parking lots. And usually what happens if you did, go into a contract that, you thought you were getting soup to nuts, and realized that you were only getting the soup on that, to really educate. So where Staten Island really benefits from this is the education point of and the plan that we want to get out there. So this is a lot more than just, hey, this is what and how to do it, but more of the conversations. For somebody that is on here, we're inviting OYA representatives to come. They'll do what they call a SWOT analysis of your property. They'll have that consistent conversation with you, and until a point where you're confident of what you're asking for, what that cost is, how the savings come in on a more broader place, more broader spectrum within the areas of Staten Island. And although that we target the lower middle income, we, there are other entities along, in the other parts of within the Mid-Island or the South Island, Southern tier, where these properties, when you listen to the word community, it's community back into the grid. It might be something where you don't have a tenant, but you're bringing in the solar, and you go into an agreement where you're putting community back into the grid, which is a credit back to you, and understanding that process. So it's really, a great time to bring this out now, as a lot of people are looking towards this, and we're trying to see if we could make an impact on many of the projects that are there, to go into a better operation. We've seen it all on the single houses, but then we have a stockpile, like we had said before, with 27,000, 25,000 square foot buildings that will have to, in the next 2 years, face the process of making sure you have an energy rating that does not get you into problems that, well, I didn't realize that. I wasn't thinking that way. I thought I had time. You're not going to have time in 24 months when they start initiating that law. And where it usually goes, it's those that are within the know, and the property managers, large scale properties. And then what happens in the lower middle income areas, that education, that knowledge doesn't come in fast enough so that they could catch up.
Thank you, Jay.
Very well said, Jay. And it's important. I don't think we can all do this individually. I do believe there's having panels on your roof is a great way to start, but a lot of people just don't have the just extra cash sitting around to finance these projects. So this is a great way to start. And we can't do this alone, right? We need to partner with organizations such as SIEDC and our other partner, Podoroff and Associates, who's also a part of this project. We have to partner and do this together. So thanks, Jay, for that.
Okay, so we've had a couple more questions come in while Jay was speaking. So one is from Jerome, and he asks, does the land site need to be as flat as shown in the pictures? So flat is ideal. I can answer this. Flat is ideal, but it doesn't need to be as flat. So we have, so what you can see here is like a lot of solar panels, and they're all on some mounting. So really how flat the land has to be depends on what your mounting system can handle. So we work with a company that has polar racking, and we buy from them, and they have a really excellent and wide range of terrain following for all of their tracker and fixed tilt mounting system. So in short, it doesn't have to be as flat. Flat is better. There is certain tolerances that we can build to for less flat land, and we have built on some pretty interesting terrain. Large in that polar racking has supplied it. Like I saw a company in the US Virgin Islands with quite a hilly terrain. So it's a beautiful project. I wish I could have gone out to it. The other question is from David, and he asks, what are the extents geographically that OYA is active now and prepared to expand into? And I'm going to turn that over to Pallavi to answer.
Sure, we're very active. I think there was one slide that showed our presence. Very active in New York, upstate specifically. And where do we plan to expand to? Well, there's a few different states that we're planning to go into. It just really depends on the community solar programs. A lot of this is just driven by policy. So for example, in New York, there is policy that allows us to run this program, which is why we're very active there. In some other states like Virginia, which community solar policy was passed. So we have Virginia on our list. We have Illinois as well. And maybe a few others that come to mind are Pennsylvania, and I think that's it for now, but we're always looking for opportunities to expand. So I hope that answers it.
Yeah. So I think what we can do now is I'm going to flip back to that slide with the email addresses. If you have any questions, feel free, thinking about it late tonight. I don't know, while you're brushing your teeth, if you have any questions, feel free to email Pallavi and to email Jay, and they'll be more than happy to answer them. We will be sharing the video of this afterwards. So if you think somebody else should watch it, then please pass it on and send them the link. So we'll share that tomorrow. And I just wanted to thank Jay and to thank Pallavi for spending the time getting this ready and to be willing to speak to this. And again, any questions, feel free to reach out. Thank you, everybody, for participating.
Thank you, everyone. And if you want us to run another info session, whether it's at your company, at your organization, at your school, university, your son's school, university, we're happy to come out and do something similar.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Thank you, everybody, and have a great rest of your day.
Mm.